Welcome to our Celtic State of Mind. It's the Monday Club. I'm Tony Haggerty, and joining me as ever is the irrepressible, irresistible, irreplaceable Russell Boyce. How you doing, Russell?
I was convinced you were going to say Amy at the end. There's not my name. I'm very well, mate. Very well. Buzzing with the new format, man.
Good.
Buzzing.
Good. Now, the more astute amongst you will have noticed there's a change in personnel. And starting lineup gives me great pleasure to introduce highly talented young lady making her debut on the Monday Club, and also to let everybody know she'll be appearing here on the Monday Club from now on in. Drum roll, please. It's Amy Canavan. Now join in at home, Russell. Every woman, every man. Join
the caravan of love.
Stand up. Right, now, Amy.
I'm never going to have a better intro than that, am I?
Oh, it's all downhill from here, Amy, I promise.
All downhill from here for the rest of it.
All downhill from here. Now, the dogs may bark, but the Canavan moves on, and you've joined the Monday Club, all right? So, how are you, Amy?
I am absolutely buzzing to be here. I really am. I'm delighted. It's a nerve-wracking one. Who breaks up the Monday Club? Me. But no, I'm buzzing to be here. I really am. It's going to be class. We're going to have a great time.
Don't be nervous, because you're talking about your first love and your last love, the rip-roaring, free-scoring, never-boring Glasgow Celtics. So there you go. So what have we got here? We've got Amy, we've got Russell, we've got Tony. First letters of those first names, that's Art. Let's get it. See what I did there, guys?
Very good, mate. Very good.
Right, now you probably noticed, first thing, going to get right into this. First topic for discussion. There's a report in the Daily Record today by my former colleague Keith Jackson. He says that Eddie Howe and others, Dominic Mackay, will bring them in by the end of the week. Now, why the end of the week? Do you like this, Russell? Tomorrow's a ball on the tee, wild thing. John Daly sprang 400 yards, because what date's it tomorrow? It's the 25th of May. Now, Celtic's modern day history is predicated on the 25th of May. Everybody knows. And what a wonderful opportunity that would be to reconnect with the supporters, show them that they're in touch and that they completely, utterly get it, Russell. Right? Now, if I'm in the hoops PR department, right, this is what I'm doing. I'm getting a picture of Eddie Howe, run it alongside Jock Stein. Under Eddie Howe, I put reboot, rebuild. Under Jock Stein, I put remember.
Oh, very good. Very good.
What's your thoughts on that? Now, that's a marvellous slogan to herald the arrival of a new manager. Now, in no way, shape or form am I comparing the two men, but every manager coming into Celtic Football Club has to aspire to that greatness.
Yes. Yep.
Right? Some will make their mark, some won't, but as long as they strive to emulate the achievements of the past, we know, the supporters know, they'll be in good and safe hands. What say you to that, Russell Boyce? Reboot, rebuild, remember.
No, I love that, mate. I love that. I think if we're being completely honest about it, though, Tony, we've had an excuse every week why it would be the perfect week to announce how, you know what I mean, for the past 2 months.
Just a gift horse, come on.
But this one, that's got a lot of good connotations with it. I think it is important to try and reconnect with the fans. There's no better way of doing that than dishing out some Lisbon patter to us yet again. I mean, why not? But obviously the flip side of that is you're not wanting too much pressure on Eddie Howe. But if it was me getting the Celtic job, it's not going to happen, by the way. But if it was me, then I would be aspiring for greatness as well. That's what you should be. Don't be scared of it. Aspire to be it. And I think right now, in terms of the support, the disengagement is so wide now that, you know, it could be any day, literally, that he gets hired. We're going to feel, though, my worry is now, if I'm being totally honest, is we're all going to have an overwhelming sense of relief as opposed to that unbridled joy we were all hoping we were going to have. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like when you used to win a Glasgow derby, right? And I was just relieved. I was just knackered. Do you know what I mean? Like, I never felt like, oh, this is amazing. I was like, oh, I'm glad that's over. And then if you lost, of course, it's devastation. And we need to take that into consideration. Until said article today, there was obviously stories circulating yesterday that perhaps this still might not be a done deal yet and cast an iron. So cast iron deal. You can't cast on in iron. Anyway, I just think that would be the devastation thing. If Howe is announced this week, I will feel nothing but relief. If they come up with a slogan like you're saying, a wee bit of a decent marketing campaign, do it on a date that they know is synonymous with the supporters, it shows they're thinking of the supporters, then I think that does certainly gives them help in repairing what is a lot of damage that they've caused in the past 12 months.
Correct. Your thoughts on that? Are you on board with that tomorrow? Being the day, 25th of May, come on. It's a no-brainer, isn't it?
It is a no-brainer.
And I've no brains.
There's no other day, like you say, left on this calendar year really that could be synonymous with the fans. Like you say, this is the last chance. As Russell says, there have been up-team chances up until now to do it in correct days, and you can do it on the bounce back from a defeat, a win, whatever's happening across the city. So that's all been missed. There's not that many opportunities left. This really is the last one. I think we spoke about it last week that it probably will just happen now on a random Thursday, but this is the last chance for it not to happen on a random Thursday. You know, it would be a little touch to the supporters. It'd be a little nod to the supporters to prove that, no, we do still hear you. We do actually still even know that you're there. But if it doesn't get done tomorrow, if it doesn't even get done this week, I still wouldn't be that surprised. But as Russell says, it is now just going to be a sense of relief. And I think that's quite sad that it's now just going to be, we got over the line, because Celtic cannot afford to not get it done now. It's not a case of anything else. And you can put all your financial matters aside. They cannot afford to not get out right now.
It's a saga now, isn't it? It's been a saga. I mean, the first meetings that they had were 2 months ago, I believe. Yep. You know, it's become a long, drawn-out, protracted affair, but there you go. Amy, just wanted to say, lovely top that you're wearing, and you can tell us what it is. What is it? It's a 93
number, isn't it? Where is it? It's a side. It's, go on, Russell.
No, I'm trying to work out. I can't work out, man.
Oh, it was right away from the badge.
I can't even do it, but my eyesight's terrible, man.
St Etienne home strip.
Of course.
Ali Lever, Russell.
Yeah.
I like that. No, that's smart.
It's not too bad.
Right. They were in the 1976 European Cup. All the fans were singing Ali Lever. Lost to Bayern Munich, unfortunately, but there you go. But yes. But now, Bournemouth's defeat to Brentford in the playoffs on Saturday seems to have accelerated that process, right?
Yeah.
So a key part of this deal is now the arrival, possibly, of Stephen Purchase and Simon Weatherston, who was Eddie Howe's backroom team at Bournemouth.
Right.
It seems to be this big summer rebuild planned, obviously, and they're in the frame to be joining Eddie Howe. I think Dominic Mackay wants to kind of introduce them all together, perchance, which maybe say that it's going to be at the end of the week. And also, there's rumours that Richard Hughes is also wanting to join the party as the DOF, uproot his family from down south. So, I mean, it's all kind of positive press now. And when papers like The Record and stuff are saying it, you tend to think that they've been tipped some kind of wink, and that it is a done deal, and it is a matter of now just when that's going to happen. Are you happy about the fact that we spoke about this before, but that Eddie Howe is bringing in his tried and trusted lieutenants? Are you happy with that, Amy?
Absolutely. You know, it's been something that we spoke about so much throughout the season with Lennon, that one of the mitigating factors, whatever you want to say, was the fact that he never had his own team and he never got to pick his own team at all. Any manager, I'm not just even picking on Lennon, you want them to be working with guys that they know inside out. Success for Neil Lennon first time round, because he's turning to Alan Thompson, to Johan Miel, but even Gary Parker was in the setup. Guys that you've got to, yourself, when if you go into a job, you're wanting your support network beside you. You don't want people that you don't know what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. Do they bounce off you? Do they not? You don't even look in football management, just management as a whole, a working environment. You work better at your own work if you're working with people that you enjoy working with, people you're friends, you get along with. So it's vital to a good and happy environment. And that's what we spoke about as well, that there's been a real lack of unity in the Celtic side this season. And it doesn't just mean the side, it includes the staff and includes the backroom team and everything at that club. And at the top of that is obviously the manager. And if he's not happy with, like you say, his next line of management, his next line of support network, then it's just going to filter down, and it's never the cracks are just going to get bigger and bigger. It's not going to seal. So it is vital, of course, that Howe brings in his own trusted team. And maybe to us right now, it might not look that a name or whatever, we might be like, oh, don't know them. But as long as he backs them and he supports them and he feels he's getting something out of them, then it's a success.
It's the same way if you guys don't like who's leading this pod, you can always call his head, So, Russell, carry on, sir. Sorry.
I think, no, you're fine. I think there's two sides to what Amy's saying. I agree with that. I think the guys that are below Howe, he needs to know that he can trust. You know what I mean? He needs to know that the team. I think there's a bit of a divide in support about whether it's appropriate he appoints his own director of football. Because that then means the guy, you could say above you or you could say alongside you, whatever you want to say, is actually cherry-picked by you as well. Thus creating an invincible, good word, environment, right? Whereas, are you getting the same scrutiny as you would before? Is a director of football or targeting the director of footballer's choices for the football team that he thinks would be persons of interest? We'll come to that later. Or is it the manager who's actually kind of just choosing them all but saying, oh, it's the director of football who did it. Look, we've got a director of football here. Like, it's him who's doing it. And I think there's a wee bit of... I think there's two sides to that aspect of it that I'm not quite sure where it's at. I think the backroom team thing, you're absolutely right, Amy. I think Neil Lennon found himself out to dry by not standing up for himself when he was offered the job and demanding that he did bring in, whether it was they had to push and shove about maybe getting a couple of members of yourself, but you at least are going to need a couple of guys that you can count on. And I felt that was his own doing, though. He was offered the job. You were not, you didn't need to take the job. He chose to take it. So my sympathy begins and ends quite quickly with that one. But I certainly think what we did learn from it is that it's not a concept that works. It doesn't work. They need to know their team. I think, especially, or at least the vast majority of it, do they need to hire the director of football? Is the poser I would put out there, though.
Well, Fergal Harkin rumours not gone away, so there's every chance it could still be Fergal Harkin, which, on your point, Russell, would probably please you because that wouldn't be someone who Eddie Howe could maybe manipulate and control like Richard Hughes and that kind of the identification of players. So that's possibly, it's not gone away, the Fergal Harkin one, so it could still possibly be Fergal Harkin. What do you think about that, Amy?
As you said, it's not gone away. So when something sort of, it's just nesting around. It's hanging around, kind of like a bad smell, but it's there. So there could be something there, and within it. But as you say, and I totally agree with Russell. When it's, I was obviously talking about, like you say, that next line, like below you, and your assistant manager, your first and coach, and all of that. But when it comes to, as you say, almost your boss, you're handpicking your boss, then that's a totally different ballgame. As you say, you could just say, oh, director of football appointed this or selected this player, but no, the manager really did. So there has to be a little bit of a balance. And in the same way that really probably within Howe's backroom team, we would probably like somebody with some sort of Celtic connection as well. You'd like to see, I don't know if it be like a Stephen McManus promoted or a Mark Birchall. That's the sort of thing as well. So there's little gaps and cracks in every little statement. But I think Harkin, like you say, he's got the experience. He certainly holds a decent enough CV. And again, it would be something, like you say, breaking away from that mould of being Howe's man, but also coming in and doing the job and not being a novice, because it's a difficult sort of job, and especially up here, it's one of those ones that not everybody really knows exactly what it is, and you try and speak to people who have perhaps been in that director of football director sort of role, what exactly is your role, and everyone has a different sort of determination of it, because it is still such a flexible role, and it will come with the relationship, the partnership, and whatever the club does decide what they want that individual to do. But I definitely wouldn't be huffing and puffing if it was Harkin, not at all. Harkin, sorry.
Can I just say one more thing on that?
Yeah, go on.
One more wee thing on that, right, is, see if it's Richard Hughes, and we all envisage that if Eddie Howe takes the job, he will naturally, like Rodgers before him, does well and then ends up in the EPL. Hughes is going to go with him. Yeah. That's the thing. If it's someone else, it's a Harkin. You've now got at least some of the structure still in place, and we're not having to start with a clean deck like we are right now, which has caused panic, let's be honest, when we've all realised we're having to start from scratch again. So I think that again would add to the argument that perhaps I think Harkin would be a safer bet in the sense that I think he could then be the continuous person there if Howe were to be attracted to the Premier League in a few years' time.
Could always ask Peter Law what the definition of a DOF is, couldn't we? or is that right? Hire him.
That's why he's not the CEO anymore.
He's been doing it.
Surprise!
Aye, a Scooby-Doo style. Yes, indeed. Like, also, with new guys coming in, there's always going to be transfer talk and speculation and stuff like that. But I wanted to throw some names at you here because speak maybe possibly in depth about a couple of targets that Celtic have been linked with. And my first one, I saw your tweet the other night, Russell, and for me it's a no-brainer for Celtic to just inquire, because he is now a massive person of interest, but not just to Celtic, but seemingly there was a story up here that he's now got maybe 31 clubs interested in him and some concrete offers as well. And the player I'm talking about is Ryan Gauld, who was unlucky not to make the Scotland squad for the Euros. But you're an admirer, Russell, aren't you? And you think it's something that we could possibly do. Because I think Ryan Gauld is now hitting his peak years as a footballer. And if you get a player who's hitting their peak years as a footballer to perform for Celtic, you have one to watch.
I think my memory goes back to when he was, he was getting heralded as the mini Messi and all that stuff. And I know it was hype and all that, but he was a seriously impressive 18-year-old player in that Dundee United first team. Remember, he's the one that cost more than Armstrong, cost more than Mackay-Steven, more than Chifche, more than Robertson, the lot. Yet the big bucks are paid on him by Sporting Lisbon, who I think inserted a £48 million release clause, something like that anyway, which gives you an insight into they thought, wow, there's a player here. Didn't work out. But the flip side is I love that about Gauld. 19, 20 years old and he goes to Portugal. It's a bold move that not enough Scottish-based, or maybe they don't get the offer, but I mean, not enough. I don't think of UK-based players. I think it harms the English team as well that they don't have enough players based abroad. And I think he's learned a lot of life skills. I think he's obviously finally found his the right club, shall we say, at this moment in time for him, which was Ferenc. I think he had 9 goals, 7 assists. And the Portuguese top flight, let's be honest, is ahead of the SPFL. It is. In terms of the quality throughout the league, it is a better league to be competing in, and with a different style of football, which is brilliant to come if we were to be able to attract him back, for him to have under his belt. As you say, he's 25 now. He is coming into his peak years. There's no transfer fee because they got relegated, I believe, that you can get him on a free transfer. You talk about persons of interest. That should be someone you're looking at can impact your first team straight away. And if we can get him on a free transfer, that should be increasing whatever wage budget you would have set aside for a Ryan Gauld normally. Invest it then in that if you're needing to put together a more attractive package than, say, let's say, for example, a Norwich City or something like that, we're in for him. That type of... It always seems to be teams like Norwich who are competing with, man. It does my head in. But it wouldn't surprise you if clubs like that were interested. How do you make or break the deal? Well, the fact he's not costing you anything in fees, we should be then able to, to put something extra in an attractive sort of salary package for Ryan Gauld, and he would definitely interest me.
I'll tell you something about Ryan Gauld. Ryan Gauld was telling journals like myself when he was 17, 18, he wanted to go away abroad.
Yeah.
When he was at his hype, with Dundee United, and mini Messi and all that, and he sat and he told us, I want to go abroad and play. And people say, is that not something you want to do, when you're older? And he went, no, I want to do it right now. He said, if the right offer comes in and it's attractive to go, and this is to get a 17-year-old footballer, and I thought, that's utterly brilliant. I loved hearing that, not because I wanted him to leave Scotland, but I just loved his ambition. Yeah. I want to learn a new style of football. I want to learn a new culture. And then last week on the Monday Club, I told Eric Dyer's dad story, learn the language and all that. And he embraced himself. That's what he did, and he's loved it, which is why he stayed. Because if you can't get a game for Sporting Lisbon, you might think, I'm going home. That's your comfort zone, isn't it? That's your comfort blanket. Oh, spit the dummy, I'm going home. But he hasn't. He's played for a unfashionable Portuguese club, and he's made his mark, and he's done terrifically well. Now, I know I say all the time, but that has to be a person of interest for Celtic. They have to be in there competing with everybody, those 30 clubs. I think English clubs, MLS clubs are in from, but go and get them. go if because he's somebody, if you can entice him home. And that might be the carrot that brings him home, because he's coming to a top club. Amy, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you're spot on in everything you say. I was another advocate. I really wanted him in the Scotland squad, and I do think he's probably been a little bit hard done by. You look at the stats, you watch the videos, and that's the beauty of social media now. There are so many videos out there about him, Jack Hendry. You can't sit and be ignorant and say, "Oh, I don't know what he's like." No, because it's there for you. The footage is there for you now. Mm-hmm. So, and there are a lot of great Scots abroad sort of accounts out there, and there's plenty out there to see who this sort of player is and what he's built into. I'm only probably qualm and is that he had that little loan spell at Hibs, didn't he? And he really, really struggled with the physicality of the game.
I think he got injured, didn't he?
He did get injured as well, yeah. He was definitely carrying a little bit of injury. I fear that, obviously, in the clips that I've watched as well of him, he's technically brilliant. He certainly is, and we knew that when he was at Dundee United, and he's quick on his feet. But is he really what Celtic are looking for right now? Is he going to come in and start ahead of Turnbull? Because I think in that sort of role it'd be between him and Turnbull. Turnbull goes to Euros and Gold doesn't, and I know that's not a determinant factor. I appreciate that, because you look at the last time that Ryan Christie's getting selected for Scotland, but David Turnbull's was ahead of him in the first team. So there's no real rhyme or reason to that. But I just feel right now, I think it's the deeper midfield role that Celtic would possibly be needing to strengthen in, the Brown-esque sort of role. But as you say, if there's a time to go for Gold, it is now. He'll be on a free. Like you say, if there's anything that can entice him back to Scotland, if he has got ambitions, maybe he is feeling right now, I need to come back home to get a look in the Scotland setup. He's doing everything he possibly can abroad. As you say, he's being that different sort of model, being the guy abroad that we don't have a lot of. Jack Hendry's different because he's still on loan from Celtic. There's still that connection. But he has been that little bit different. Fair play to him, like you say, at such a young age. It's like my age going out to Portugal. I wouldn't be doing that. So fair play to him. But I just feel maybe, like you say, that there's that carrot on the end of the stick that's a big club going to be coming in from in Celtic. There's European football as well, hopefully, where he can showcase his skills. And then, as you say as well, then there's the potential of Scotland call-ups.
Amy, you got your dream transfer to the Monday Club.
The
Monday Club's the only club I ever wanted to play for. I mean, I'm waiting for that speech, So you mentioned a Scott Brown replacement, which brings me on to the next target. And this is the one that polarises and divides opinion among Celtic supporters. But I wanted to get your thoughts. And we've touched on it briefly and we've spoke about, but Lewis Ferguson, who's just handed in a transfer request to Aberdeen. Now, my thoughts are you don't do that if you think something's afoot. Now, he's only going to sign for 2 clubs, isn't he? Or one of 2 clubs. So, is there interest from Celtic or Rangers? And if there's interest from Celtic, maybe Eddie Howe's asked what's under his nose, and a file has been put his way to say, here's a person of interest, Russell. And I know your thoughts, Russell. I think you would have him in a heartbeat, would you not?
Absolutely. I think he's still a bit raw at times and all that, but I kind of like that anyway. I think Celtic have been lacking players that have been a bit raw this season, to be perfectly honest with you. I'd like to see someone do something a bit unpredictable that might be a bit rash. It'd be nice to see someone actually care at times, It's been all too polite and nice for me and accepting defeat, where I think someone like him with a real coaching staff has the potential and probably is of maybe not the same flair, funnily enough, that Scott Brown had when he was at Hibs, because Scott Brown used to be box to box. He used to do tricks, so everyone used to remember it and think, this guy's going to come in and lighten the place up. We know what he moulded into. I see no reason why Lewis Ferguson couldn't be coming in to try and try and become the number 1 sitting midfielder at Celtic. I think for all his male sorrows had a lot of praise. I still think he's flattered to deceive the coaching staff on various coaching staff at times now as well. There was a reason he was pulled back out the team, and then we've touched on sentimentality. There was then other games where you went, well, that's just been a basic straight shootout, and Scott Brown is still ahead of you in the pecking order, I'm afraid. So I would definitely think that he can't be counted on as the only sort of defined sitting midfielder next season. And I know Lewis Ferguson gets more forward and all that right now, but I think he could be moulded into that sort of role. My concern with the transfer request is it reminds me of Jamie Murphy when he was at Brighton. known Rangers man or whatever. Rangers sniffed about, couldn't afford them. He handed in his transfer fee and drove the price down. I think it was at 1.2 million over about 40 years, and that's how they could afford them. I think I think there could be a bit of that involved right now, that he's had a whiff that there could be interest from. I'm sure we're his boyhood heroes, and you can't blame him for that. And this might be the first attempt at driving that price down. We only need to look at his teammate Scott McKenna to find out Aberdeen do deals when they have unhappy players. They rejected $6 million for Scott McKenna and they sold him for about $3 million. That may well be Lewis Ferguson's way of thinking right now, that he could drive his price down and make himself an affordable person of interest to the other side of the city. Whereas if I was Celtic, I would gazump that right now, meet the asking price, get him in, and what a statement signing he would be. Folk can kid on, he's only done it in the SPFL. Firstly, his name, whether we like it or not, is massive in Scottish football. End of story. It is synonymous with Scottish football. When you look at, Barry Ferguson's achievements alone, his uncle, Derek Ferguson, a lot reckon were a better player than Barry went before. I think injury curtailed his career. This guy is staunch. You sign him at Celtic, it is box office for more reasons than just what he can do in the pitch, which I would still say are my predominant reasons for wanting him, would be what I think he could bring on the pitch. But I think the other stuff as well, it's statement signing that we're still the biggest team in the country, and you need to do that sometimes. You
sign good players, Russell. That's the only signing policy that Celtic should have, right? It's the only one. And in my opinion, humble as it may be, Lewis Ferguson's a good player, because I've watched him graduate from Hamilton to Aberdeen and play for the Scotland 21s, and he's got a bit of needle and a bit of dig, something, as you said, that was missing from Celtic last season. That huge heart, and he's something to put into a lot of Celtic players, and a lot of Celtic fans have rightfully went mental, but, a bit of devilment, that, as you say, I like that. If it can be channeled in the right way, that aggression, and then playing for a club like Celtic, you'll become a better player. You will. You'll be playing with better players, and you will be coached by a better manager if it's Eddie Howe. So that's my thought process on that. Amy, your thoughts on Lewis Ferguson possibly coming to Celtic?
Like you say, he's definitely got that bit of grit, and there's no denying it. Like you say, he stuck the boot into a few Celtic players. I don't know. I just think when I was getting into football and Barry Ferguson, I really do, and he's also at Kelly Hearts. But I just, I just think, I don't know, I would much rather Celtic go for Alan Campbell. I really would. And he is a slightly different role. I appreciate that. And if there is anybody out there who were wanting to exactly fill that the Scott Brown role, it probably is Lewis Ferguson. I totally get what you're saying.
Would you sign both?
Would I sign both? As if I was going for Russell's stance that we're still the biggest club in the country and wanting to prove a point, then yes, I would. But would it just be signed? Would it be for that purpose? Was it like when we signed Scott Allen to kind of just prove that we were still the biggest club in the country? Because I think there was a little bit of that in Allen. I still think that Allen could have been a player, and I actually think Hibs made a massive mistake this season sending him up north on loan. I think they really could have done with him. I appreciate everything that he's went through, and I know that's sadly kind of underlined the last few years of his career. But there's no denying there certainly was a bit of that in the Allen deal, just to prove we're still the big guns and we can attract anybody. So there would be, but I think if we signed them both, it would purely be for that. I much prefer Alan Campbell. I really have for a few years. I think for a few years now, everybody can sort of see the player that he was. And Motherwell have done extremely well to hold on as long as they have. Mm-hmm. You could have said the same about Turnbull as well. There's certainly something in the water there that they're doing right. But if it was down to me and I could only choose one or the other, I would certainly go for Alan Campbell. I just think he's technically that little bit better as well. His physique is fantastic. And he's got the grit that Ferguson has as well. I think Ferguson maybe has 4 or 5 red cards in him in a season, but I like to think that Campbell's got a little bit, maybe the head screwed on still a little bit more, but again, that could just be me going to the Ferguson name.
If we do get Campbell, if we did sign Campbell and Ferguson, do you know the beauty of it, just talking about the Scott Allen thing, was inexpensive mistakes if it doesn't work out. And look how many expensive mistakes we've made of unknown quantities that have been expected to stroll into our first team and haven't fit the bill. So I take Amy's point. I think if Amy's obviously watched more of Campbell than I have. if you think Campbell's a better bet, sign them both. Campbell's available on a free transfer.
I would also use the caveat that if you brought in Campbell, there'd be a reunification with Turnbull, and the two of them produced a football with Motherwell, right? Which earned Turnbull the move because he was his trusted lieutenant, Alan Campbell. So, sometimes guys just function around certain players, and Campbell and Turnbull worked at Motherwell, So I think as well that I would sign them both given the chance, because you say, Russell, wouldn't be an inexpensive mistake. Now I can hear the people, they're no Celtic class. I can hear it now, but if you are asking about Eddie Howe's going to come in and say, who are the persons of interest under my nose, then you're going to hand them those kind of names, aren't you? Because I watched that cup final on Saturday, and I've got to be honest, the likes of Doig, Nisbet, and all these players, they let themselves down badly in the big stage. The one that shone for me was Jason Kerr, who's another one that's been thrown into the frame, right? So if you're watching that, you would sign a guy like that before Doig, Boyle, or Nisbet. That's me personally, right? So if you're going to compile a list of players that are persons of interest in your own country, then those guys are on it. Campbell, Ferguson, Kerr are on it, and maybe a backup list of Doig, Boyle and Nisbet. But you're more inclined to focus on the former three as opposed to the latter, because that was a big stage, and Hibs didn't turn up, and their flair players just never turned up. And you're looking for something more than that. If you're going to go and watch them and say, this is your stage, show me why you should get a move to a bigger club or a bigger stage.
I've got a couple of points. I just think, when I watched the cup final, I was bitterly disappointed, to be honest, with so many Lennon there. But I was disappointed that, these guys. George Doig was instantly £3 million price tag slapped on him.
Yeah.
I am telling you, it exists. There are more fashionable clubs to buy players from than others. Now, Natasha Funnell said yesterday on the show about the goal scorer, whose name Rooney, the goal scorer for St Johnstone. She says, I predicted he might do what he did, etc. She goes, and we would have loved to have seen right backs doing that for Celtic this season. And she quickly added instinctively, I'm not saying he should be Celtic's first choice right back, but I actually would flip that and go, but if he'd done that in the Hibs shirt, we would instantly be saying Celtic should be signing him as first choice. But it's because and I think there's real snobbery that exists in football that we all might have a bit of, that we can't help. Am I elevating Lewis Ferguson above Alan Campbell because one plays for Aberdeen and one's at Motherwell? Probably.
Well, on that point, David Kelly, and thanks to people that are tuning in and subscribing and putting in their comments on the Facebook and YouTube channels, David Kelly says, I'd take Rooney if he's cheap. We need 2 right backs. So there you go, which is the point that you've just made there, yeah. So he scored the winner in 2 cup finals, Amy. Do you think he's worth a punt? Or?
Yeah, I definitely think Russell's spot on as well. That there is a little bit of snobbery because we're talking about these midfielders as well. And I'm lucky enough that a guy actually I go to uni with has played with him since, I think they played at Hutchie Vale together or something like that. But there's a snobbery with Ali McCann. Why are we not talking about Ali McCann? Ali McCann has been St Johnstone's standout player this season. I'd argue that with anybody, I really would. Rooney's been exceptional, he really has. Of course, he scored in two finals. Jason Kerr's been phenomenal. He's a local lad to here as well, so I've known about Jason Kerr for years. But Ali McCann has been absolutely superb. He's 21 years of age. It was a joke that he wasn't on your Young Player of the Year, whatever malarkey these awards are. He is totally and utterly been a standout. It's also such a big miss already that he's pledged his allegiance to Northern Ireland. It's going to be a massive miss for Scotland. But there is a snobbery. We're talking about Alan Campbell. If, as Russell says, if Alan McCann was, like you say, Martin Boyle at the weekend, if he was on that Hibs side, we'd be going, sign him. Like you say, if Rooney was Doig, if Rooney was Stevenson, we'd be going, sign him. Yeah. Lewis Stevenson had to be brought on the other day to save Josh Doig, really. And I have been impressed by Doig, and he's a really young guy as well. But he wasn't at the races on Saturday. He really wasn't.
I take your point about Alan McCann, but I'm also saying that see if Celtic are doing their homework and their scouting, then Alan McCann will be on a list as well, or he should be. right? It's all these, persons of interest I keep going back to, but you've got to compile a list and say, right, there's bang, 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 bang. These are guys that, and Alan McCann would certainly be on that list. Alan McCann and Jason Kerr for me in that team. Possibly Rooney, right? So,
yeah.
Would you say, does it come back to the snobbery thing again? And I mentioned that a while ago. It's the whole, he's no Celtic class, or they'll not take you to the next level. How do you know that?
Absolutely.
How do you know that? I find things like that pretty disingenuous and nonsense, to be honest. Certain players will step up to the plate. It's be given that platform. And also as well, they know the stages that they're playing at. They know the grounds, they know the teams. So they get a chance to thrive and prosper because they know where they're going. All it is a step up in class when they play European opposition. But surely that's why you're a footballer. That's what you're reaching for. That's what I'm talking about at the start. You know what I mean? You're aspiring to those levels. So every player is chasing that. So you try to tell me that if Celtic didn't sign Alan McCann, he wouldn't get better. Try to tell me if Celtic didn't sign Alan Campbell, he wouldn't get better. Try to tell me if he didn't sign Lewis Ferguson, they wouldn't get better. Of course they would. It's natural progression in their career. And then it makes them puff their chest out. Celtic have just signed me. I'm going to show everybody what I can do.
Which not enough players have done, Tony.
Yeah.
Not enough players signed have done that. Exactly what you just described there. Sorry to interject, but that is it in a nutshell. Not enough players we have signed have went, wow, I'm playing for Celtic. And that we're going to need to go back to basics a wee bit with that signing policy. I think we got too clever for our own good with it and started thinking just about the Spondoolies, how we're going to make the cash. Thinking, there's a jazzy name from an unknown league.
Yeah.
How clever are we signing Bayo from the Slovakian league? How clever are we signing Klimala from there? They'll come to Celtic, score 30 goals. We're going to need to give these guys 2 years to adapt to the league. And even then, luckily with Klimala, we get the money back. Bayo, who knows where that's going to go, but it ain't going to be in the first team anyway for us. I don't see that. And I just think as well, see the thing was with the Jason Kerr interview after the game. Wow, he just came over as a captain. I was well impressed. I just thought, you're not telling me a guy with that mindset, mentality, and who on the pitch just put in the display I've just seen, couldn't make that step up in time at a bigger club. Of course he could.
Just a born leader. I mean, he doesn't necessarily have to be a captain, but a leader in your team, which we didn't have this season, with a lack of leadership.
Yeah.
A lack of people leading from the front or rolling the sleeves up or just saying, right, let's get tore in about it. Do you agree with that, Amy? Do you think?
Yeah, I absolutely do agree, and it's kind of what you're saying is, I appreciate he's split amongst the Hibs support, but just we were watching the cup final, and Tony, you'll probably know him better than us as well. This whole season I've been really impressed by Alex Gogic at Hibs. I don't think this season, I don't think on Saturday he maybe didn't shower himself in glory, but I honestly, I said to my dad, I was like, Hibs have got a bargain there. We knew what he was doing at Hamilton. He was doing all the dirty work. And as we say, right, he maybe wasn't the big glamour signing that we were after, but would he put in 110% in a Celtic shirt? Would he improve in a Celtic shirt? He certainly improved in Hibs. He's got those international call-ups. He's clearly loving his football, playing at that bigger club. And being at that bigger club, you can see he's grown into it. I've been impressed by him this whole season. I really have. And it's not as a surprise because, as we said, these guys are right under our nose. As we're saying with, Alan McCann or Scott Allen, these guys, we are watching them week in, week out. And if we as fans can sort of take that all in by watching snippets, we are watching, Sports Scene, or we are watching little clips on YouTube or whatever it may be on Twitter. These like I say, these recruitment processes should have so much more on these guys. And if we can have these sort of opinions with evidence, it's not just having an opinion and saying, I think we should sign him after one game. No, it's having a catalogue of evidence here. Then, as you say, no player in Scotland should be going under Celtic's nose.
Yeah, Stephen T comes in saying Ferguson nowhere near what we require. Well, that's another man's opinion, so he's entitled to that. So that's fair enough. I
think the clue in Stephen's comment, though, is the fact he says never. If it's never, then that doesn't really matter about his ability. You've already made your mind up. So I'm gonna need to push back a wee bit on that one.
Here's one I'm going to throw at you, which you might not be totally aware of, but Josh King, Everton. Now, this is a player who revitalised his career under Eddie Howe at Bournemouth. Yep. He scored 53 goals and 19 assists in 180 appearances. but he's only played 137 minutes for Everton and 11 sub-appearances. He's been capped 54 times, for Norway. And I just think, joining the dots, if Eddie Howe can convince him to come up, it could be Edouard-like. He's got that kind of ability to play, and, you've seen it before. And I'm not saying he's a replacement for Edouard, but you need to find somebody of quality to produce that amount of goals that's leaving. If we're conceding that Edouard will and probably go. Now, Josh King to me is a massive person of interest, and I think the Howe connection could swing it. And I think Ancelotti's decided, because he's out of contract, and Ancelotti's going to decide in the next week or so what can happen. So hopefully Eddie Howe maybe get in there and take him and say to him, look, come up here, reinvent yourself again, and then a couple of years could maybe walk back into the Premiership again.
Yeah, I think he would have Chris Sutton vibes. I think that would be what would stick out to me. I think it'd be someone that was trying to rebuild after maybe a couple of years in the Premier League wilderness, despite a proven track record also previous to that in the Premier League itself. So that would be, and then working with someone that as well, like Eddie Howe, who you're absolutely right, had at Bournemouth for a long period of time. 54 caps for Norway, absolutely no mug. And if I remember correctly, 3 years ago was like the Man United.
Yeah, he is Norwegian, isn't he?
Aye. George King's Norwegian, definitely.
Aye, I thought I'd
No, he's Norwegian.
Right, cool. I thought I'd hit a memory blanker there. But,
no, he's Norwegian.
And also, if he comes, you could maybe persuade Chris Ayer to stay if he really must, Yeah. Amy, your thoughts on Josh King? Have you know much about him? Have you been keeping tabs on that? Or is it somebody you would like to see come north of the border?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we said just before we came on here, we've definitely been linked to him before. Of course, we've been linked to every striker up and down the country. But I certainly would take him. I think you'd hope you'd sort of get Scott Sinclair sort of vibes that under his manager, under Eddie Howe, that he would, like you say, sort of rejuvenate himself as Sinclair just sort of performs always under Rodgers. I understand there's a few comments coming in obviously saying that he is a little bit injury prone, and that's the risk you take, of course it is. But he's still 29. He's not a granddad, He's still at a decent enough age, and I would take a punt on him. I really would. He's proved it before. He certainly has. I think he's about 6 years at Bournemouth. He was there for a fair amount of time, and he struck up a good partnership. There was Callum Wilson down there as well. There was decent team. So I would like to look at him. And as we're saying, Eddie Howe will be looking to his sort of staff. He'll be looking to his sort of players as well. And if he thinks he can rely on him, then that's who he's going to go to. Everybody knew of Scott Sinclair, but if you looked at Scott Sinclair's track record just before coming to Celtic, there were many fans that were like, he's done, he's dusted, he's been there, done that, and it's not working out, he's injury prone, he's this, he's that, he had that decent stint at Swansea, whatever, folded at Villa, flopped at Villa, all of this sort of stuff. So you're going to have that reaction no matter what, because there's going to be people out there who think they know better. But as we're saying, if you're thinking that Howe's going to look to his staff, he's also going to want to look to his players he can trust, because ultimately it's all about trust.
Also, I think as well, guys come up, might be wary at first, but try it, you'll love it. That's what I think. You cannot fail if you're a striker at Celtic, really. You have to go some to fail. I know I'm talking Cascarino-esque and things like that. Also, and a few.
A good job to do.
I know, but in a poor team, but all being equal, if you get the managers and all that, you will love it up here. You will be. I mean, Josh King could really reinvent himself under, as Amy says, somebody that he trusts, and that's what I mean. Scott Sinclair hit the ground running at Tynecastle, and that just carried him. That day he scored in his debut, and it just bought him every bit of time that he could. But realised in that moment, this is magic. This is absolutely magic. He got it. He kind of got it then, and I think players like Josh King, who you said an apt word there, they're in the wilderness. You need to feel wanted. You need to feel loved. Come up here. Celtic fans will love you if you get it. Moussa Dembele's proof of that. Tweeting the other day about how Celtic are still champions and real invincibles, and I'm a champion still and you're champion. So that kind of stuff still has it in his heart. It's left an indelible mark. So that's what you want to say to guys like that. Come up here, give it a try. You do well, you'll be a legend. You'll be a hero. They'll love you. You'll love it as well. So I would. I'm all for that, for Josh King, and getting trusted players, tried and tested, that have been there and done it, and maybe just lost their way a wee bit and just in need of reinvention.
But I'm sure that the vast majority of that Bournemouth squad that Amy was ringing a few names from there as well. I mean, I think they all still hold Eddie Howe in the highest of high regards, and I think as much as sometimes the Celtic thing, it shouldn't be a difficult sell, but sometimes when players are used to the likes of the Premier League and all that, it can be. I then flip that and think, Eddie Howe, if Eddie Howe's going up there, Eddie Howe just needs to say to Josh King, "You're coming." You think this is where we're going, and I think he would have complete faith that was the right decision, because you've built up 6 years of trust with a guy who's done nothing but be good for your career so far. Why would he lead you up the garden path now? So I think it's very realistic.
Yeah, of course. You agree with that, Amy?
Absolutely.
That,
absolutely, I'm on board.
And another one that, talking about some incomes, but an outgoing that kind of perplexed me. Everybody knows where I stand on Christopher Ayer, right? I've voiced my opinions on it often enough, okay? But I don't say, but seemingly Newcastle talks are advancing for a deal for £8 million. Now, if you're me and you're Celtic, I'm saying no to that. Despite the fact I don't particularly rate Ayer, but I still think that if people rate him as the player that he's supposed to be, then you're talking between 10 and 12 million before you even get round the table. That's my own personal thoughts on that. And maybe he is, out of the players that are supposed to be leaving, the one that Eddie Howe could possibly convince to stay. If he wants to. But 8 million I think's cheap for a Celtic player to go to the EPL. And I wouldn't be encouraging Newcastle for that price. 10, 12, I think that's be a decent return on your investment. Your thoughts, guys? Come to you first, Russell.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was before Amy's time or not, but Newcastle signed a centre-back from Rangers for £8 million about 18 years ago. Boomsong. So that tells you, Johnny Lane Boomsong, so that tells you how low in terms of transfer fees that is, when you think in that 18 years' time, the money that has developed in the English Premier League since then is multiplied at a rate of knots even then you couldn't have envisaged. So how they're still throwing ballpark fees around that are the same as nearly 2 decades ago, 2 decades ago for one half of the Glasgow rivalry's best centre backs, I'm not having that. I think it is low. I'm not overly worried if Chris Ayer does leave. I think you've made that clear, Tony. I mean, I think right now he'd be a bit of stability compared to everyone else is leaving, it seems. So you might want to keep him, but if he is going to go, make sure you get the right money. In this day and age, an EPL team, £8 million pays a player's wages there for a year. That's it. So £8 million is derisory as far as I'm concerned, and it'd be knocked at the park.
Amy?
Yeah, £8 million's a slap in the face, it really is. No matter, like you say, what you think of Ayer or whatever, you look at the figures getting chucked about in the market right now, and I know we could rattle off a few and say like, oh, this is a disgrace or whatever. Ayer's still young, he's still got that potential. You're not selling a 30-year-old centre half who's coming towards the end of his career. No, Newcastle or whoever it may be will get him coming into his prime, and they'll be looking at it for the longevity of that career then. At 23 years old, he's still remarkably young, and he's just turned 23. So 8 million is, I think it's a massive slap in the face. And if Celtic accepted anything like that, we're talking about disconnect with the fans. I think that'd be an absolute disaster. I really do. I think it would be... I think there could be a severe backlash to that, because you're talking, like you see, one of the biggest assets right now, as Russell said. Look at the amount of players that we are losing, are set to be losing. You look at the backlash of all the comments for Olivier Ntcham right now as well. If that's happening to Ntcham, a player who's not been anywhere near the setup, but then you look at Ayer, who's arguably been player of the season this season. I know that's not a great title to hold, but it's it'd be more than disappointing. It certainly would be. So yeah, for $8 million, I think it's a disgrace. And you look at, like I say, you just look at the other figures getting chucked about. 20 million for X, Y, and Z. You don't need to be naming names. It's a joke, to be honest.
Amy, it's a dangerous precedent as well. Because like you just said, there loads of players are leaving. We become easy pickings if the first sale that you make in the summer is an £8 million Chris Ayer.
And
what then bid do we get for Edouard?
Exactly.
Whatever, we all know it's going to be a lot less than what we'd all hoped for a couple of seasons back, but that's just driving down the price tag of all our players that are going to be available this summer. It'd be a very, very dangerous early summer sale to make Chris Ayer at £8 million.
And also, why is it that Celtic, when they're selling players, they're low-balled, but whenever there's interest shown by Celtic for anyone else's, they're high-balled? I mean, why have Celtic allowed that to happen?
Exactly, and that's just what Ross is saying. It's continuing then that poor precedent that you're setting. Sorry.
So why is Lewis Ferguson £3 million or whatever, and then Ayers £8 million? I mean, the disparity there, because Celtic want them, so you're just going to go, right, we want X amount. You say Scott McKenna, £6 million, Celtic were quoted, left for 3.
Yep.
So, that kind of thing. So people are just chancing their arm when it comes to Celtic, because they know at Celtic, this in juncture, there's a bit of desperation about them because they need players in, they need to rebuild, and they need to move players on. So
Celtic have a reputation for it, Tony, now. Because Celtic when they were doing well and when they were qualifying for Champions Leagues, were selling Virgil van Dijk for £13 million.
Yes.
It was quite simply always going to go on to be maybe best defender in the world. I don't know. I didn't think he'd be far off. I thought he was going to go on and rock the English Premier League. There was no doubt about that. And I appreciate we got a sell on, but you put a sell on a big fee, not to put the eventual sell on you get and add it to the fee you sold him for, and then go, we actually sold Van Dijk for 20 million. That is just jiggery pokery with numbers, all that nonsense, isn't it? It's nonsense. You valued Southampton. There's a reason Southampton kept coming and knocking on the door. Because they kept going, these guys just keep doing it. They're the gift. They keep winning trophies and giving us their players for button. You look at Stuart Armstrong's $7 million move was only 4 years ago. £7 million. That is the equivalent in, in Scotland about 500 grand. To the English Premier League teams. It's incredible that we've kept undervaluing our players, and as you rightly say, then missing out on key number one targets due to the price being quoted BC over is too high. Get in the world of dealing.
We need to reverse that trend of Celtic being seen as an easy touch for transfer targets and an even easier touch for the ones we want to buy. Easy touch for the ones that you sell, even easier touch for the ones you're trying to buy. I mean, you'd agree with that, Amy?
Yeah, absolutely. As Russell says, it's just that you just sort of shake your head at it, because there you go, Stuart Armstrong, like say £7 million, it's pennies, it's nothing, it's buttons, it's just a joke, and you're just making the laughing stock in it. And then you hear all the reports or the comments or whatever, and they say, Scottish football, blah blah blah, value. Well, we're feeding into that mantra. We're feeding into it because we're, like you say, then we're getting caught out because there's these high prices for the number one targets, the targets we have to be going for. But then I was going to use a word, but it's just a farce. It's just a farce.
I always remember the one that got me the most, Tony, right, was top goal scorer in the SPFL ahead of Moussa Dembele was Liam Boyce. Good surname. Yeah. And he went to Burton Albion for £500,000. That is our Premier League's top scorer, ahead of Moussa Dembele, a French under-21 international who was, an absolute world of a player, outscored in a lesser team by Liam Boyce, and we instantly, the first bid that comes in, 500 grand, and he's sold. I think it was Ross County he was at. Now, the only way you can get out of thinking, 500 grand's a lot of money to Ross County, the only way you can change that mindset is by generating more money, and that is by putting real values in your players. and knowing the market you're selling them to. Because when you're trying to then go back to that market...
For Russell. 2 million quid Liam Boyce should have went for to Burton Albion.
Yep.
2 million quid.
Yep.
I wouldn't even entertain a bid less than that. If you really value the player and value your club and value the league that you play in, just say 2 million quid.
Yep.
Take it or leave it. Somebody would have took him because he scored goals.
He scored more goals than Dembele. I mean, it's just like, what are we talking about here? You know what I mean? It's like...
If you get somebody at a table, that's what you say. This guy's outscored Dembele. How can you offer 500 grand?
Yep. And I just think right now we sell to a cheap market and we're not realising we're buying from the same market. So us are devaluing our players. And then that's why we're missing out on Ivan Toney's, etc. Not to go into all that again, but these guys are seeming like they're a lot of money. I wouldn't have thought he'd cost so much from League One. No, you need to get your head out the sand here. This is the market we operate in. It is overinflated.
Yep. Now, the last thing I wanted to touch upon, Russell, which will probably delight you, was the Celtic girls' team or Celtic women's team. You watched another brilliant derby victory yesterday, and I was making the quip before you came on that you're not a member of FIFA, you're actually a member of FOFA, which is the Friends of Fran Alonso. So yes, you're behind him, you like what he does, you were advocating he should get promoted to the men's team because he gets it, but a great victory for the girls, and they're now in pole position for a Champions League place, aren't they?
First and foremost, an amazing result. 3 Glasgow Derby wins, outstanding, all done in sort of similar styles, which shows it's not a one-off. That is grit, determination, passion, all these things that we talk about lacking in the men's team. But what I would say is, if it's going to be Eddie Howe this week who gets in charge of the men's team, the good thing about Eddie Howe is, when you watch his documentary, he very much gets involved with every aspect of his club, right? So he knows like everyone first name terms, and he'll have them all in huddles and things like that. He will do very well chewing the lug of Fran Alonso, or just watching Fran Alonso's demeanour, how he operates with his team. And I'm sure Eddie Howe, the beauty of Eddie Howe is he will take stuff like that seriously, because there is a lot to be admired about the work that he's doing there. He's in a women's game that is underfunded still. He's playing on a plastic pitch. He's playing against part-time teams week in, week out, other than Glasgow City and Rangers. In fact, Glasgow City, I'm not even sure if they are full-time professional. And yet he takes that like his life depends on it. Not aloof, not arrogant. This guy worked in the EPL with Southampton, amongst other clubs. He's taken that level of football that seriously, like his life depends on it. I want that throughout the club. Everyone with that mindset. Why is that? I don't think that you're getting paid well enough to think like that. Come on, even if you're faking it.
Were you impressed by the girls yesterday and the result?
I really was. I was working, so I never caught the game. I've seen the goals, but it's like I say, I love the fact that actually we're getting on top of this. It's brilliant. I've followed it. Being through here, I've followed Hibs probably more than anything in the last few years, because it was always Hibs or Glasgow City. That's what it was. I'm absolutely delighted to obviously see Celtic, and that's obviously who I'm supporting. I'm not trying to say that I'm a Hibs supporter, but it was for so many years just Hibs and Glasgow City. That's all it was. It was a 2-horse race. So it's fantastic to see Celtic and Rangers as well have both women's teams doing so well and pushing Glasgow City. It's great. I spoke to Scott Booth as well just a few weeks ago, and he's reveling in it. It's fantastic. You look at Spartans as well. They've been decent for a few years as in addition to Glasgow and Hibs, but it's fantastic. And like you say, when you look at Spartans and Hibs right now, and they're 4th and 5th because Celtic and Rangers are just pushing that so much. Russell said it spot on. The women's game is still so critically underfunded that it's a disgrace. But look at that little bit of funding and that little bit of attention that Celtic and Rangers both gave to the women's team, and already both are doing so well. It's absolutely fantastic. Celtic against Rangers this season, they have been absolutely phenomenal women. They have, as Russell said, they've got it. There's no surprise that that's came from Fran Alonso, that he's put that across. He's encapsulated the whole Glasgow derby. He's got it, how important it is to win these games. And it's been a breath of fresh air. And as Russell said, that's the sort of infectious guy that you're wanting in the men's team as well. As I was saying earlier, if you're wanting to if you're wanting to push Stephen McManus up or Mark Burchell, it's because you're wanting that sort of reaction that Fran Alonso's given. You're needing that little bit of somebody who gets it. And I know that's all we're saying, but it's remarkable that a man who has no connection to Celtic prior to his stint here has got it so much and got it in abundance, and he's not putting it on. It's so infectious, and I think that's probably the biggest thing. It's infectious amongst his squad.
Yeah.
What I'll say to wrap up this bulletin is, I agree with everything that you've said there. In an ideal world, in a soccer AM style, Tubes meets, I want when Boyce met Alonso.
That'll happen, mate.
It has to happen. And on that note, I just want to say, Amy, what a sparkling debut in the Monday Club. Fantastic.
Awesome, Amy. Well done. I'll be at a job soon.
Russell, you're just marvellous. And to say thank you. Thanks for everybody to tune in. Thanks for your comments. Hope you enjoyed it. This has been the Monday Club. I've been Tony Haggerty. That's been Amy Canavan and Russell Boyce. Thanks a lot. All the best. Take care.